Welcome, everybody, to episode 7 of The Pre-Flip, which is normally just me and Jamesbot, but today we got a special guest, and we'll just introduce him right at the start. We got Stax here. How you doing, Stax?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Gibbs?
I'm doing good, man. You know, I love your work on the Rival Series. The promotion tournament is coming up, and me and James, we're clueless, right? We're clueless about these Rival Series teams right now. We used to, at least, have an excuse of we traveled on those days, so we couldn't watch as much Rival Series. But, you know, I got 2 kids at home, so I'm going to need a lot of help with these Rival Series boys. I didn't get to watch a lot, so we're going to be breaking that down throughout today. But before we get to that, we got to go through why this is here, and that is because of Prediction Esports. That is 2 E's in prediction. They are sponsoring the show, helping out me and James, and you can follow them on Twitch, twitch.tv/Prediction Esports. We have Spotify, we have iTunes as well. Those links will be in the descriptions when I throw it up on YouTube tomorrow morning. So if you're here live, hopefully someone throws the link in chat, and if you didn't see it, just go to my Twitter, and they're there as well if you want to download the audio versions. But on that, I guess we have to talk to Jamesbot Stax at some point here. So, James, how you doing?
Do we really?
You don't have to. Stax will let you carry the show. I mean, you are the star. We brought you in for that reason.
So there's been a lot going on in the world, and then also in the esports, some controversial stuff. But we're not here to talk about any of that because, that's happened. Like Team Esper, they got their punishment, and that's great. But next week is the biggest weekend for RLCS careers for 4 teams on NA side, then 4 teams on the European side. 2 will live on to play in the RLCS. 2 will drop down to the Rival Series. And we call this the career weekend because you can make your career here. So we're going to try and break down both NA and Europe, maybe do some predictions here or there, but just, talk through the Rival Series teams, talk through the RLCS teams, and see where they land at this moment. So let's bring up the screen. I did this correctly, I think. Here we go. So here's our first bracket. We got North America. We got the number 8th team that came in the RLCS, Rogue, versus Stromboli, who came in 3rd in the Rival Series. Then E United, who came in 9th in the RLCS, versus Charlotte Phoenix, who came number 2. It came down to the final game for them to not clinch number 1 to be automatically into the RLCS. They will be battling out. Now, obviously, you just have to lose twice, and you're out of this tournament. You win twice, you're into the RLCS. So, Stax, the first thing I got to bring up here is, can Charlotte Phoenix actually clutch this up, or are we seeing something very, very bad once again for 2 straight seasons?
I mean, psychologically, Karma's just got to be shot right now because last season was supposed to be a slam dunk. They couldn't possibly not make it. And lo and behold, they didn't. I think this time around, if they can put last weekend behind them, the fact that they weren't able to clinch number 1, I think that they can. I think they'd rather play E United than play Rogue.
Sure.
Because for all the talk about how ugly Rogue has looked this season, I don't want to be lined up against Kronovi with effectively my career on the line. So I like Charlotte's chances a little bit more than I like Stromboli's. For
me, Charlotte, it was last season they were the number 1 seed, I believe, right? Coming out of the Rival Series. Yep. And then it was the expansion season. So you had 2 chances. They had a playoff, and they actually had a better shot because it was Page playoff as well. They lose 2 straight. Then they go up against G2 and Cloud9. And honestly, that's one where you expect them probably to lose at that point.
Yeah.
And not only that, but they could have done it in their final week of league play. They had a Game 5 series against Chaos, and they couldn't do it. So that, to me,
that's where it hurts.
It hurts big time. And anytime you're going up against these RLCS teams, it's going to be challenging. And like you guys said, Kronovi, even though Rogue wasn't playing well, you watch the games that Kronovi stepped up in. He's not outdated. He's still an incredible player. And First Killer is also a player that just has so much raw ability. So it's going to be tough for Charlotte, who's repeatedly had a pattern of not being able to rise to the occasion.
The one nice thing is 2 of these teams go through, right? So we're talking a lot about Rogue, and I think we're speaking relatively highly versus their peers in this tournament. They just played last night in the Astro tournament. I actually casted that. That was a lot of fun for the last qualifier for that. and they won the entire thing to clinch a top 6 spot to go to the championship weekend for 10K. So that was a big moment for Rogue. They didn't play anyone too difficult. There was a lot of rival series talent. They beat Flight at the end to win it all, while Flight was taking out RLCS teams on their way to the bracket. But Rogue looked good. Wonder looked good. He was making a lot of good 1v1 plays, transition that into the passing game. But all three at different times were popping off. And that's the major question, right, for Rogue is, will Wonder show up? Because I feel like when they start to struggle, Wonder has a couple misses. Then I feel like First Killer's like, all right, I have to do a little bit more than I want to. And he'll try and push it a little bit. And then the rotations kind of break down for Rogue. And that's what we saw last season. But the thing is, Rogue, they finished 8th, right? They didn't finish 9th where everyone was like saying they're a bottom 2 team. It just happened that they played Flight in the final week. So it seemed like that was the case because, they were battling for 10th. But they did better than E United. And I feel like, from what I'm seeing on Reddit, no one's given E United a shot here. Are any of you?
I'm giving them a shot, certainly. I think that going into promotion tournaments like this, anything can happen. You think back to Chicago, when Fibion had their perfect season in the rival series. Everyone thought, oh, they're guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Yeah. They're in. And it just doesn't happen. Promotion tournaments, when careers are on the line, whether they're going to be made or whether they're going to be lost, it is the most pressure that any player is ever in. You think, even like compared to the World Championships, when you're at the World Championship, that you'll be around next season. These players are playing for a chance to be in the big show. Like you can't lose these games. And so because of that level of pressure, I think it makes it where just anything can happen. Even the teams that are playing the best going into it doesn't mean they'll play the best in the tournament. So it's really, you have to tune in on those days and see how those players play. But I think given track records, Kronovi has proven that under pressure, he knows how to play. So the question is, how's Wonder and First Killer going to step up? How are the guys on E United going to step up? Will Charlotte actually be able to make the most of this where they crumble under the pressure? And, for Stromboli, they looked good all season long, but these are very new players. And this is a level. They're probably going to be very, very nervous.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience here, like in the promotion tournament or in the RLCS from all the other teams, except for Stromboli. And Stax, like, I just need to know what happened to them. Like, after week 3, they're 5-0. They're 15-3 in games, plus 12.
Yep.
What happened after that?
I don't know if it's a case of they started almost believing the hype, or if it's just that everybody recognized, hey, this is the top dog in the league, and we've got to give them our best shot, because they got everybody's best shot from week 3 going forward. And they did look like a completely different team. And they're actually a team I worry about, because for all this talk about, hey, we're effectively a 4-man roster and all that. Yeah, even at the start of the season, I was right there on the desk going, back when we were in the studio, going, hey, if you've got 4 starters, you don't have 3. You got to make a decision at some point.
Yeah.
And then near the end of the season, Andy plays, I think, the last 2 matches for them instead of Heck, and they don't go particularly well. Like, yes, they beat 72 PC, but they lost to Omni Nation, and they didn't look great when they were beating 72. So, it's for this team, I think they're phenomenally talented, but I think they got the worst of the 2 draws going into the promotion tournament. And if they drop down very early, boy, either E United or Charlotte's going to be a real tough hill for them to climb.
Now, to me, when we're looking at this promotion tournament, and like I always talk about this when I'm doing my predictions or playoff scenarios, like on my own YouTube, not necessarily on the show, where like I don't care who I play first, or at least I don't care who these teams play first. Like, I think I would rather play the hardest team first, because then you get their nerves up the most, and your nerves will be relatively high as well. But there's less of a risk, because if you do lose early, it feels like a lot of these times teams just ride that momentum through the lower rounds and win that lower final. When you're in the winter final and then lose and then have to try and regroup, I feel like that might be a more difficult road. So I think I would rather play Rogue here and then be like, all right, we have a better shot because it might be a little bit more chaotic because of the nerves going on with the first game of the day or whatever. And if we do lose, obviously it's a tough road, but if we win that lower round one, then we got the momentum in that lower final. So I don't think it necessarily matters. Like, I think I would rather play the tougher opponent first, but that's probably a personal preference from every single team. I think every single team will react to that differently.
Yeah, I think if they wanted to play the best team in this tournament, at least on paper, I think they would want to play Charlotte in the first round. Instead, they're guaranteed to play them second or even maybe in their third match, wherever they end up. So it's going to be a challenge for them. I think no matter what, they've got the toughest road ahead, because I do think of the 4 teams that are in this tournament, I think Stromboli is very clearly the 4th best team.
Yeah, my concern always with teams that get hot at the start, but then they cool down at the end. You know, they were 5-0, that they finished 1-3. Is like, is this the real you at this point? We saw it with the Sonics through the regional championships. They kind of left the season on a down note, and then what happens? They lose 8 straight games in the regional championships. Obviously, it's a little bit different, but I would worry for Stromboli. Like, I think, yeah, they're probably the 4th best team. I think, like, E United will take them down. And then it comes down to, it seems like most of us consider Rogue to be number 1. Is that the case here?
For me, I think they're the best team in the promotion tournament.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's between them and Charlotte, because again, for as much as Charlotte seems to struggle when the pressure is on, like when they have a chance to finally take that next step, I still look at a team that's got Karma, Shadow, and Turo, and Turo is just absolutely nutty. And I think, man, they are a real.
I wanted to ask you about that, Stax. You've been watching this Charlotte Phoenix team all season long. How was Turo and compared to Jaywiz? Is Charlotte a better team?
Yeah. I don't want to say it was night and day, because that'd be unfair to Jay Wismont. He had a fantastic season with Warriors, but what Turo added to the team, I think, was a little bit more around midfield than what they got when Jay Wismont was there with them last season. I think the exchange worked out great for both Turo and Jay Wiz, but I almost said Jay Wismont again, but Turo stepped in, and it was a very noticeable difference. I think he had a better start to the season than he had a second half, but overall, Turo, they certainly didn't miss a beat with him.
That's one thing I've been seeing a lot with Karma is, I think for a while when she was trying to create these teams or find players, like, it was always never like a top talent generally, like maybe Jay Wiz a bit, but like it always felt like she got maybe a little bit down the line and then someone wanted to join her. Now it seems like she's recruiting these guys really early, with Shadow, who came out of nowhere and played amazing last season. Now Turo. So she's really starting to create super teams around her. And we know that she's a very talented player as well. And she has the capabilities to be in the RLCS. So now it just comes down to, do they clutch it out? And again, like I think last week with that loss to Chaos, or 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, but it was like, sure, Chaos had a lot to play for as well, but that was a team battling to just stay in the rival series. And when you're going into a promotion tournament, those are the teams that you should beat when it's a big moment.
Yeah,
so
but
there's
at the same time, Chaos is a good team. They're a good team. Corrupted G, former RLCS player. They're not a walkover by any means.
Oh,
so
sure.
I for Charlotte, the thing that I like about Charlotte too is that Karma has done it before. She did it with Splice, with Jay Wismont, and Nose Dude. They made it all the way through. They had a phenomenal season. So she's done it. So I'm not super worried. Like, obviously, we've had a couple seasons now back to back where they've gotten close, but they're in the position every season. It seems like seems like every season they're putting themselves in these positions. So they just have to have things go their way tomorrow or this weekend. They just have to have things go their way, and I think that Charlotte, I would not be surprised if it's Rogue and Charlotte making it out.
Yeah, that's who I have as Rogue and Charlotte. It seems like with you, Stax, as well, Rogue and Charlotte. Seems like across the board. But it's really interesting because when we used to have this promotion tournament, it used to be, the bottom 2 of RLCS versus the top 2 of the rival series. And when that was happening, rival series had like a 75%-ish win rate to make it out of the promotion tournament. I think you probably have the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
but
I wish
it's
I had
roughly
the
around there. It's roughly around there. And then last season, So now we had the expansion tournament. So you had to drop down 2 levels. And then it was a 75% win rate for the RLCS to make it in. And of course, if that was only 4 teams, it wasn't a big sample size. But now we're somewhere in the middle where, it's not the best of the rival series. It's not the worst of the RLCS. Somewhere in between. So I really wonder how this is going to play out and see if those numbers will continue. Because then it would seem to me it's going to be 50-50, right? One RLCS, one rival series. But we'll see how it goes.
It's interesting as well because even in Europe, ARG, they're what's their new org team now? It's
Team BDS.
BDS, yeah, BDS. So if you look at their performance last time, pretty much all of Europe rival series got in to the RLCS last season, and they were kind of middle of the pack, but there was a void left, and they just stuck at the top or essentially finished where they would have had those teams been gone last season. And in Europe, things are getting mixed up quite nicely for them. But you wonder, what is this cycle going to be like? Because we're seeing a weird situation a lot of times where the players who get demoted out of the RLCS, they kind of just stop playing. A lot of times people just stop playing. Teams break up, and it takes time for teams to claw their way back, which gives teams more of an opportunity to come in and fill the void.
Well, it happens especially in North America that when teams get dropped down that they disband. In Europe, it doesn't happen nearly as much, and I do attribute that to, I think, the European players. I don't know if it's more of a sense of like competitive pride or just being better competitors in general, but they understand the whole promotion relegation system. It's the heart of their entire soccer league out there. So it's something that they're very familiar with, very comfortable with. Okay, yeah, we got relegated, let's work our way back up, because so many teams do that through the Premiership.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because, again, now it's like, all right, 30% of the rival series has a shot, at least for the RLCS, going forward. And you would hope these players kind of hang around because, again, like, to me, it's always weird when they disband or they, like, go and retire when you're, like, a middle-of-the-road player. Because it's like, well, like, this is it. Like, it's your one shot. Then, sure, you might not be in the RLCS for one season, but that's 6 months. Then you could bounce back and, try and compete once again. So it just seems weird when people just completely retire out. And sometimes that's because, school is more important or whatnot. But I just feel like it's your one shot at like esports,
it's hard.
Right? So,
like the most egregious one for me to this day that always will stick with me probably forever is the CLG team.
Yeah.
That CLG team, even if they got relegated, I think it would have been one season and they would have been right back in.
Yeah, and sometimes I think that's like internal issues. We've seen Dapper talk about that a bit. They weren't really having fun playing together or whatever. So I think sometimes that happens where it's like, well, we just don't want to play together.
One roster change,
sure. And then you could always make one more later, right? Like if we see that with a lot of players where they'll just slowly change their team and everyone knows it's like, well, Kronovi's not going anywhere on Rogue, right? And who knows? Right. Maybe he just continually changes this roster out. Now, obviously, like if they make it back to RLCS, we'll see. But I don't see any of these teams disbanded. Maybe like E United. Like I think the hard part is if they don't make it and Hoxer gets poached, then I think it's a little bit more difficult.
It makes it more tough, but I think they still stick with it because, and I think we're starting to see people come around, and I think that's because of the really the great work from Psyonix to really make the rival series a prestigious league. And they're doing more to make the rival series more important, like automatic promotion if you finish first place. I think that's a huge incentive for teams to stick around because in the past you could destroy people, go undefeated in league play, and it still wouldn't be guaranteed that you're getting into the RLCS. If Fibion back in the day, Veloce, Fibion, they went undefeated, they didn't make it in. So now, because of just these minor changes, you think of them as minor changes, they're actually massive. I think to incentivize these teams to stay in the league, stick around, even the expansion of 10 teams into the RLCS, 10 teams in the rival series, these players are getting a lot more opportunity now. They're taking it a lot more serious, and I think it's just been growth. So I think we'll see a lot less disbands coming out just from how much the game's maturing. Now, what I'd love to see more is maybe some rival series org items and things in the esports shop.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I think a little more support from rival series in that regard, or doing a little extra, I think could go that extra step to making it even more prestigious, and I think that kind of stuff I'd love to see, especially when you have Stromboli doesn't have an org, they have a generic Rocket League logo. I want to see all these rival series teams be able to pull in quality orgs
for sure. And then the other note too is like there's just so much more to pick from the talent pool, right? So even if like say in E United they lose Hoxer, there's so many talented players that might not have a guaranteed spot right now for the rival series, and no one wants to go into that play-in and be like, all right, well, we're gonna give it our all because that's an 8-hour day. Anything can happen. So I think these teams can pull in some top talent that doesn't want to take the risk. They just want to be in the rival series, make their name then. So I think there is incentive for teams that lose their best player to just pick up a lot of this up and coming talent because there is so much of it.
Yeah, like it's the extra effect, right? Where he's on a team that isn't really performing well, but just the spot, when you're on a stage like the rival series or like the RLCS, you become you're making your resume live. You're on you're out there in this league where you're put on the spot and you have to perform. And if you do, maybe you are on not the greatest team. Maybe you did, skip the line and just join because you wanted to make a name for yourself. And hey, if you do that, it honestly might be good enough to get you picked up by a team in the RLCS if you really go crazy.
And now the other thing that I wanted to bring up really quick before we go over to the European side is that incentive, right, of the RLCS teams, where sometimes I think when they drop down like into this promotion tournament, there's probably already conversations going on like about roster moves, about maybe some of these players getting picked up. Like I thought last season when TSM was at this point that they might not win it because Alpha's going to be like, well, I'm going to get picked up anyway. So why do I care? Right? So you have to worry about that where like E United's like, well, if someone's going to pick up Hoxer and then Hoxer is like, well, this tournament doesn't mean a lot for me at this point. Like you would hope that they still want to win it for their teammates, but at the same time, the incentive might just not be there.
Yeah, and I was actually really surprised on the North American side when you talk about potential roster moves and such. I put it at a very close to 0% chance that either G2 or Cloud9 were going to stay together, even if they survived. And they both did stay together. And, there was a lot of talk about whether or not Cloud9 was going to make a change. They ultimately didn't. And it worked out fairly well for these North American teams. I think the shorter offseason actually benefited those teams that, all right, we have all this experience together, rather than the teams that were trying to make roster moves and try to get some kind of chemistry going with an offseason that was ultimately about 8 weeks?
Yeah, it was very short.
Yeah.
But the only downside, I think, for that, or maybe the argument against it, is the teams like G2 and Cloud9, they know that they could do it before, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have teams like E United that they did make it to the World Championship, but they had like a very lucky regional championship run, maybe, like a lot of people would say, where they barely made playoffs, then made that run. And it's like, well, we had about 2 great weeks, guys. And now it's like we've had 2 seasons together. Maybe it's time to move on at that point. But we'll see. Because, again, they could easily come out and win that entire promotion tournament. Like, I think this is a 3-man race on NA. And I think probably Stromboli's the one looking on the outside. So they would be my only big surprise if they would have made it through to the RLCS. But, like, again, Rogue and Charlotte are the 2 favorites for all of us. And then I would say probably E United for, like, all 3 of us is that close third.
Yeah, I will say this about Stromboli, though. All season long, especially in the first half, we were wondering, okay, when is this going to end? Like, when are they going to come back down to earth? They're not that good, right? And they proved that they were good enough to get to this point. They've been proving people wrong time and time again. It would not surprise me one bit if they come out this final weekend here and prove everybody wrong one more time, because that has been their MO all season.
It's going to be really interesting, too, because we talk about the pressure. Like, even compared to the regional championships, we obviously lost a lot of that pressure for the regional championships because there was no world championship. But, like, it's the same exact pressure as always for the promotion tournament. We always say that this is probably more nerve-wracking than maybe, like, even a world championship day 3 just because of what it means for these guys. So it's going to be really fun to see who steps up. But let's move over to Europe while we still got some time here. And all right, Stax, you got to tell me about Espanyol, because they've been on fire, it seems like a lot, but they didn't come in number 1 for the rival series.
Yeah, I think that was a huge surprise to everybody that this team didn't go number one because they looked so good for so long. But it comes down to the importance of every single match where you only get one shot at everybody and you only get one shot at the team that's right on your heels. In this case, it was BDS. And the former ARG guys came out and just slapped them right in the mouth. And, it's going to be a real feel bad story for Espanyol if they don't get there because they went 8-1.
All right. So here's my question, though. All right. Here's my question for Jamesbot, actually. All right. So you're a RCD Espanyol. You're 8-1, but you went to 7 Game 5s. 7, and you went 7-0. Now, is that a good sign, James, or is that a bad sign? I'm not sure which is which right now.
To me, that's a bad sign. It's good. There's good elements to it and bad elements to it. Right. That means that you kind of play to your competition, which in my opinion isn't always the best thing to do. You want to be a team that can blow people out. You want to be able to really beat the teams that you're expected to beat, and you want to beat them convincingly. But also just the clutch factor can do so much for your mentality, right? And when you've been in situations where, maybe they go to Game 5 or go to Game 7 in this promotion tournament, and it all comes down to winning that one game. They'll be like, we've done this a lot. We've done this an immense amount of times. So we're confident going into it. But in terms of, does it mean that they're as good as their record shows? I think that's kind of the point you're getting at, Gibbs, is that these guys very easily could have had a much worse record if a few games didn't go their way. And so I'm with you. I think that perhaps, RCD got away with a few, but at the end of the day, I think when you go in, like we were talking about before, you're going into this promotion tournament where careers are made and careers are lost, and they're coming off a fantastic season, and TSM is coming off a pretty disappointing one. And I think that the mental game of Rocket League can a lot of times be an important, if not the most important element going into a tournament or going into a series. So I think RCD is in a good spot going into the weekend.
Yeah, one of the best points for them is probably back for the tournament run by Johnny Boy, the European Invitational. They did well there. They took out a Team Reciprocity. They took out Team Veloce as well. They came in 3rd overall. They took out Endpoint. So they took out 3 teams in the RLCS. Now, obviously, that's a weekly. Some teams don't take it as serious, but that's a good sign, right? They had like an insane win streak going on like around that time, and then it kind of fell apart when they played BDS in the rival series. But these boys have shown that they can beat RLCS teams, and I still think because of that clutch factor, there's a lot of pressure for the rival series when you go to Game 5 because there's only 3 spots available, so one extra loss could really hurt you. So I really do think that's going to at least help them here. But I am concerned because I don't like teams that go to Game 5 forever. But I would put Espanyol as one of my top 2 teams right now here.
Yeah, you go back to that match with BDS. Actually, go back even a week further when they played Notorious Legion, and they looked as bad in the first 2 games of that series as they'd looked all season because they got shut out 2 games in a row. But even casting that match, I just had in the back of my mind, there is no way that they're actually going to lose this series because I've seen it time and time again. They started the season with a reverse sweep. So when they pulled it together, once they took Game 3, Game 4 was actually probably the most boring game of the season because I just knew, okay, they're clearly winning this game, so let's just skip ahead to Game 5. And then they just beat the tar out of Notoriously. I think that was the one they Braziled them in Game 5. So, they've done it time and time again. I feel like I would definitely like their chances in this tournament because they are so used to playing with all that pressure. And I would be very, very surprised if Espanyol is not playing in the RLCS next season.
Well, I mean, I don't know how much you've seen or how much you were watching the RLCS Stax, but there was moments where I was quite impressed with what TSM was able to put together. I think at times Magnus, to me, was an incredible player. He hit some really impressive highlight shots. Now, I'm not saying that, they're better than the other teams in the promotion tournament, but even for Endpoint, we've seen Endpoint played so many series where they were playing really, really close with some of the better teams in the RLCS. So I think this is going to be a very tough promotion tournament.
Yeah.
Europe has they've always kind of chewed each other up. It's always been really close, and I think that this is going to be the same for me. The question I have is, how good is Solari? Like, are they a team that you think is going to compete here, Stax, or do you think that they're kind of like going to be the team that finishes near the bottom in Europe?
No, I think that they are. First of all, Carrion's a stud. He is absolutely insane. For as clutch as we talk about Espanyol being, Carrion has been an absolute heartbreaker for every team that he's gone up against in the rival series. It has been, they've had a lot of close series, and a lot of teams have come very close to springing upsets against them, and it's Carrion every single time. Hits one big shot after another. And, they're not going to be able to rely on that as much as Espanyol does, where it's a different person every week. But they are definitely a team that has flown under the radar for much of the season. And then you kind of look at the standings and realize, oh, hey, the Solari team's here.
Yeah.
And with Endpoint and TSM, they're certainly not world beaters. They're here for a reason. I would definitely, I don't want to say it's quite a coin flip. I think Endpoint would be able to survive against them, but they're going to get all they could ask for and then some.
It's going to be tough because we have Team Solari over here where the last time they lost in the rival series was February 22nd. So a month and a half ago, they lost 2 Game 5s on back-to-back days versus the top two teams from the rival series. So these guys are good. They're beating everyone else. And I really do think that if I coin flipped my predictions, they'll probably do better than my actual predictions for the European promotion tournament right now. I feel like all 4 teams, it really comes down to who shows up, right? Like Endpoint, they've been hit or miss throughout the RLCS season. TSM, I throw a lot of hate on them, but they've been hit or miss. They obviously, in the final week, they take out Barca, who then turns out to be a top 4 team. Obviously, Barca probably wasn't playing as well then, but still, they have the ability to make plays happen as well. So it's really going to come down to it. But here's the one reason why TSM is not going to make it. That's because 7 hours ago on Twitter, Remco, he got a Valorant key. So this is why TSM is not going to make it through the promotion tournament. And I actually want to find out. I'm probably going to do a funny video of I'm going to go through everyone's Twitter, see who's talking about Valorant right now, and those are the teams that don't make it, because I feel like there might be some distractions coming out right now while you're in containment. But obviously everyone's going to be trying their best, but it's going to be. It's going to be really interesting because I do feel like TSM is on the way out, right? These 3 players feel like they're on the way out.
Yeah, they do. It does feel that way, but at the same time, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if TSM and Endpoint managed to make it out, because you just need to win 2 series. 2 series, that's all it takes. You just need to be feeling it on that day. But if I was a gambling man, I would probably be putting my money on Espanyol and Endpoint to make it out.
Yeah, the problem I have with I had a big problem with TSM last season. I thought that they just looked so, especially in the first half of the season. I can't remember if you were casting with Jorby at the time or for somebody else, but there was a point where Jorby actually had to say out loud, "Guys, this is the RLCS," and I know TSM was playing, and they looked atrocious, but they put it together near the end of the season. Yeah. I don't think this time around they're as good as they were at the end of last season, because they did pick it up at the end of last season. Mm-hmm. This season, man, it's every problem I had with complexity. I mean, they put up some all-time awful stats, and TSM is right there with them this time around. They shot less than 16% as a team. And I get it. Shooting percentage is not the be-all, end-all. There's a lot that goes into what is a shot, what isn't, and all that. But 16%.
And
that's atrocious.
They only scored 1 more goal than Fairy Peak in the same amount of games for league play. The entire team. TSM's offense was not there. Not only shooting percentage, but just scoring goals. So, but these are defenses that are now from the rival series. It's a lot different. It's going to, this one's so hard because I really do feel like whoever wins the first 2 matchups, I think, will probably make their way through. Just because I think those teams will be more on for the day. And I don't think that the momentum is going to change too much from the winners final to the lower final, unless like Endpoint loses early, then maybe they make a run. But I don't see it happening any other way. And all right,
Well,
so I'm going to put your feet to the fire.
Okay.
Who's the top two here? Because I think I'm going both rival series boys right now. I'm going to go Espanol, then Team Solari. I think these guys are good. There's a lot of talent in the rival series. I feel like Endpoint has just been too inconsistent for me. And obviously, I'm not picking TSM because, I can't, at this point from this whole season. So I'm going to go both rival series boys here.
James, I'll let you go. I got to think about this.
I already said it. I think Endpoint is a really great team. I thought that they dominated the rival series when Espanol was in the league. True. I feel like Endpoint's a good team. I think Endpoint's a good team. I would be shocked if they don't make it. And now the question is who finishes in that number 2 spot. And I think if I'm following my heart, I think it's Espanol. I think they will likely do it. But when it comes to Europe and how good all of these players are, even TSM, I think they all have the ability to just show up and play. Yeah. But on paper, I'm going to pick Endpoint and Espanol.
All right, that's the end of the show, right?
I need your pick, Stax.
Yeah, I know. I Espanol seems like a home run. It feels like they can't miss, right? I think they are an absolutely phenomenal squad. I think what TSM has going for them, if they have one thing at all, is I love defense. Absolutely love a team that puts in the effort on defense. Endpoint did not. They gave up over a couple goals per game. But TSM, for as bad as their offense was, they were still in the middle of the pack defensively. So that gives them hope. But I have a hard time believing that this Solari team does not keep up what they did at the end of the season. I think it's going to be between them and Endpoint when it all comes down to it. And I just feel like this Solari team, I think Carrion has been on a mission all season. And as much as it would break my heart to see Endpoint end up back down in the rival series, it's hard to bet against Solari.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I do feel like if there was betting lines, I think Endpoint is that favorite, followed by Espanol. Then I think probably TSM just because of the veteranness, and then probably Team Solari. But pretty interesting. Okay, me and Stax going for a little bit of the underdog picks, and James going for the Endpoint
right
squad.
Ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, didn't work out for you in the 50-50 throughout the season, which I still got to make that
let you in.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that, Stax, I just want to talk to you about, rival series. How has been the new boys coming in? How did that all work for you? How did that flow? Because we always talk about the RLCS, and we didn't, have too much change. But you guys over there for the rival series adding 3 new talent. How'd that all go for the first few weeks, and how did you guys incorporate it?
I thought it went incredibly well, especially casting with Supersonic all season. He picked up the baton very quickly and just ran with it. It was great. F-Dot is just one of the funniest guys out there. I wondered if I was ever going to cast with Spaceman because I knew he was going to come in and be a play-by-play. I wondered if I was going to end up casting with Subi again, and I like that Psyonix actually kept the pairings from the very start of the season. And Spaceman, when he was in the studio, was just on fire. He was great. His energy, his love for just being there, and it's hey, I'm doing Rocket League. This is awesome. And I feel like being back home and not being in that studio environment, I think it kind of had an effect on all of us. But I think seeing, as painful as it was to see Subi casting with somebody else, I thought Spaceman did a fantastic job with him. And I hope that we all get together again next season when all this COVID stuff is well in our rearview mirror. And we all get to go out there for a full season in that studio and put on a proper show all season long. Because first of all, I need to get together with the boys for some more Din Tai Fung, and need to just see my rival boys again. This whole being at home stuff isn't doing it for me.
Yeah. And the one thing that I miss, we bring in these guys, and for the past year before the season, we were doing like improv classes with the Rival Series casters and the RLCS casters. So that was always fun, but like we've already known each other, forever and all that stuff. So it's like, oh, it's 3 new people. And then it's like, well, we didn't do improv this year. So then it was like, oh, I've never met them still. And I'm like, I wanted to meet them.
I got a quick story about that improv stuff. You remember the mind meld game, right? Where
you
had 2 people stand in this circle, mind meld, and all that. So I think it might have been week 1. It might have even been a rehearsal day. I walk up to the desk, Subi sitting there with Spaceman. I just go, hey, Subi, you know me, right? And I just slap the desk and go, mind meld, 1, 2, 3. We both said pizza right off the bat. I'm like, this will never happen again. But it's just
Stax. You have to let Subi go. He's blossoming. He's getting his wings. Right? You just got to let him out of the nest at this point.
Yeah. It's just, I was almost floored when we just had that one moment. It's like, man. And I did miss the improv. I thought that was absolutely fantastic.
And now Subi's dead to you. But hey, it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Who?
Yeah, who? It doesn't matter. Well, James, any final words before we head off, before I do my outro?
I think for everyone, just continue to stay safe. Don't expose yourself more than you have to so that we can all get out of our houses sooner.
Absolutely. And again, thank you, Stax, for joining us. This has been The Pre-Flip, episode 7, presented by Prediction Esports. That is 2 E's. And if you want to watch it live, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern next week. We'll probably be doing like a pseudo world championship prediction show just for fun to see what would have happened and, throw out some crazy picks there between me and James. So definitely check that out next week. And then obviously we have Spotify, we have iTunes. The links will be in the YouTube description that goes on my channel tomorrow morning. So in case you missed it tonight. But on that, thank you guys so much. Thank you, chat, for hanging out. And if you want to throw some support to Prediction, feel free to throw some Twitch Prime subs their way because they support us. You should support them for these shows. But on that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And again, thank you, Stax.